Recently I've been renovating a Myford ML7 lathe. This video is primarily about the Nutlink modular belting system, but I thought it would include something that I missed out of the Myford series, which was making a key for the motor pulley. First of all though, I would like to show you this. As kindly mentioned by a viewer, the pulleys on the motor and countershaft are different from the inner pulleys on the countershaft and spindle. These pulleys are designed for a 3/8 belt, the 3/8 belt that I misplaced in the workshop. So fitting a Nutlink belt to this part of the lathe is only a temporary solution. It's making some very pretty patterns though on the motor pulley at the back. I'm confident that I will find the original belt when I wade through the boxes of bits that I got from the shed where the Myford lathe was. This pulley was originally fitted to the shaft on the motor just with a grub screw which distorted the slot, and probably the pulley too, and when I tried to remove it, and I didn't actually have a hub puller with me at the time, it moved the position of the motor's armature. I refer to it as an armature, it's actually a squirrel cage motor, but I won't go into that, it's not important. I'm going to use my milling machine to make a key from this piece of scrap steel. And what's more, I'm going to test my calibrated eye. So to do this job, I'm not using any measuring equipment at all. It would appear that I have some sort of a skill where I can look at something, photograph it in my head, and then make something to fit in the other part. I've always known that my brain is not wired properly, but some abnormalities can be quite useful. A few years ago I was doing some house repairs, and I had a really good assistant. His name is Łukasz and it's from Poland. Only 25 years old and his painting was horrendous, but apart from that everything else was fine. The house I used to live in was quite big, and all the way around the house, where the guttering was fixed, was a large amount of soffit. And some of this soffit was rotten, so I got Łukasz with a jigsaw to cut it out. Once it removed the rotten wood, this left a hole underneath the soffit that I needed to cut a piece of wood to fit. All I did was look at the shape of the hole in the soffit, go into the workshop, cut a piece of wood the same size, and I remember the astonishment of Łukasz when he offered my piece of wood up to the soffit and it fitted perfectly. He fitted my piece into the soffit using some PVA adhesive and tapped it into position. After telling you this short story, I don't always get it right, but in this case it was a first attempt and there was the piece of wood it fitted into the hole. Making this key is a very simple milling job, and as I said, all I had to do was look at the square hole formed by the pulley and the shaft of the motor, and then mill this piece of steel to exactly the same size to fit the two slots in both the pulley and the motor's shaft. And here, straight from the milling machine, once I took the final cut, it fits into the hole. All I need to do now is just chop it to the correct length. Then the idea is that the grub screw in the pulley puts pressure on the key and holds it in place. This is the first fitting of the key, and the second part of the job was to taper the key at the back very slightly using a needle file, so that when I tightened the grub screw, the key was actually physically pressed against the pulley. The final tightening of the grub screw was done with a spanner on the end of the Allen key. Over now to the Nutlink belting system. As I said at the beginning of this video, this belt is only temporary. Even though it's too big, it still works fine. In this clip you can see that I've shortened the key so it doesn't stick out. And once again, as I refit the key, I'm tightening the grub screw with a spanner on the end of the Allen key to make sure it's really tight. And when I plug the lathe back in and throw the power switch, everything starts to work as it should. Over now to a more detailed look at this Nutlink belting system. There are many modular belt systems available. This one is possibly a bit more expensive than some of the others. Using the glass-filled nylon tool that's provided with the kit, you can rotate the metal link holders as you see here. I found it much easier to use an adjustable spanner. This big plastic thing seemed to be a bit cumbersome. Once the metal fasteners are in this position, you can simply pop the belt off the fastener. I found it much easier if I bent the belt in the reverse direction to the way it normally goes, and the links just popped off the fasteners. This is the modular belt from my Boxford lathe, and it's been playing up for quite a while now. And here, when I look at it closely, I'm surprised it even worked at all. In an attempt to make this belt grip, I used belt dressing and even some grinding compound, so this belt's ready for the bin, I think. Here's the general principle. You put the original belt on the bench, if you have it, and you place the new belt over the top of it. You turn 2 of the metal fasteners and remove the length of belt that you require from the original long piece. Here's an extremely important health and safety notice. When working with or near the countershaft and motor system, you must power off the lathe by unplugging it from the mains. Then throw the switch on the front of the lathe, and if the lathe rotates, you've unplugged the wrong plug. This is a serious warning. Always disconnect from the mains. Once again, as I've shown before, I'm using methylated spirit and this small brush that was kindly sent to me by a viewer to clean the internal area in the headstock. This was a terrible job. The amount of filth in there had to be seen to be believed. The belt goes round the main pulley and then through 2 slots down to the countershaft. This job was a pain. In the end, I used a piece of copper tubing to thread through so I could pull the new belt up and over the pulley. Look at the state of my hands. They got even dirtier than this. I had to go down to the house and give them a clean. Eventually, with a lot of pulling and tugging, the belt was fitted. These belts have to be fitted the correct way round. If you look at the links, the tapered part of the link is to the front. A lathe motor can rotate in the opposite direction, but most of the time it rotates in a forward direction. And that is it, the worst job I've ever done. Closely followed by sitting on the floor with both of my arms in the cabinet, fitting a length of this Nutlink belting to the motor where it drives the countershaft. Was it worth it? Yes. My old Boxford now runs absolutely beautifully and doesn't slow down when I start turning metal. And that is it. I do like this Nutlink belting, and for jobs like this it is really useful. Dismantling and removing lathe spindles and countershafts is not something I really want to do. And that's it for this video. I have to go. Something interesting is about to arrive. Stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.